What's up, guys? Just want to preface the video that follows by saying the entire Google Doc is in the description. So if you find it useful, feel free to leave feedback, like, subscribe, all of that. Unless you hate it, in which case, give me some lovely criticisms. And yeah, if you're an agency owner, gym owner, you work in consulting, any kind of like business stuff, feel free to subscribe, and that way we can all become millionaires together. So yeah, without further ado, I hope you enjoy the video. Yeah, so this video is completely unscripted. Before I get into the seven key takeaways from the book that really changed how I see things, I'll just say a couple of things, which is firstly, the entire doc is in the description. So feel free to go and look at it. And that's really where, the detail is. I mean, there's, 17 pages. It took me a while to write it. So if you really want to dive into it, read this and then hopefully even, read the book, which is, by the way, split into two parts. The first is about wealth and the second is, regarding happiness. And secondly, I'll say that it really is one of, if not the most important books I've ever read. So if there is one book, in all seriousness, that you read this year, I would say it should be this one. It will really change the way you see life. But without further ado, let's get into it. So the first point is leverage. I'm sure you've all heard the word. If you haven't, it's explained quite concisely here, which is it's the ability to multiply output without a corresponding increase in input. So if you imagine a minimum wage job, it's quite a low leverage activity because your hourly rate is capped. So you can work as much as you want and your wealth will only grow linearly. Or something with high leverage, you would see, exponential output from an input. So without going into too much depth on capital and labor, essentially Ravikant emphasizes code and media as permissionless leverage, where you can leverage, to use the word again, an army of robots or code or AI even to exponentially grow your output relative to your input. And if coding isn't your forte, books, blogs, recording videos, this kind of thing, that also works. The point is you don't want to be stuck in a linear position like in a job with a ceiling and an hourly rate. But moving on to authenticity, this is another very important one. Productize yourself is sort of the entire key of this chapter. And Naval is highlighting that you should seek wealth, not money, not status. And you should ignore status games, people playing those games of short term, make money fast. You should, play the long term game by realizing what society wants and then giving it society its sale. So that's an important point. Accountability as well. Embrace risks. Society rewards risk taking with responsibility, equity, and leverage. And yeah, just reiterating the point, code and media are far preferable to, labor and capital as means of leverage. Lesson 3 is specific knowledge. This is a quote from Naval, and it's essentially describing the fact that specific knowledge is unique to you. It's what you're good at. It can't be replicated. You can't get someone else to do it. It may be, you're particularly talented at sales because when you were 4 years old, you had quite an eloquent discussion, or you were good at reading, or whatever it is. Specific knowledge is both an innate talent and a skill that can be cultivated. So take something that you're naturally passionate about and then learn more, use it, find a way of using it to give society something that it wants but can't yet get, as we saw here. That's really how that ties in. Then you've got the different, identifying it, nature, specific knowledge and individuality, the role of the internet, and the significance of learning. But the takeaway here is, specific knowledge intertwined with individuality and passion is a very powerful tool for achieving success, whatever form that might take, whether it's wealth, whether it's family life. Find out, what you're good at and try and leverage that. And yeah, identify and hone it. That's a really important thing. If you can figure out what you're specifically good at and find a way to give it to the market, that's really where you're going to see wealth compound. Now, fourth, Naval talks about luck. This is a really interesting perspective. I hadn't heard someone talk about it in quite this way. Maybe Alex Hormozy talks about it in a similar fashion, but blind luck is essentially, what we all think of as luck, like winning the lottery, something that's completely out of our control, circumstantial. But the other three are where it gets interesting. So luck through persistence, firstly. By stirring things up, by creating entropy, you can see this, for example, in evolution, if you believe in that. You have a multitude of activities, you have, entropy, you have a lot of stuff going on that inevitably creates opportunities that leads to outcomes. So in evolution, it would be life, all of the, trial and error. Luck through sensitivity to opportunities is like becoming an expert in a field, allowing you to spot lucky breaks. So a trader that's very experienced, like a Warren Buffett type individual. A lot of people say trading is luck, investing is luck. Well, I'm sure those people would beg to differ. And finally, this is an interesting one, luck through, unique character and skill. This is similar to a deep sea diver who becomes, the sought after expert when a treasure is found in the deep sea. It's blind luck for someone to find the treasure, but the fact that the diver found it as an experienced, treasure finder is not that unlikely. It was a product of their unique skill set and reputation. It's a picture of a diver. And yeah, going on from that, you've got building a reputation of trustworthiness, building a solid reputation in character, long-term games. I think we've talked about this before, but this is all important to read. And then we have a little summary here. 5, I think, is the most important one. Thinking clearly. A clear thinker is a better complement than smart. Clear thinkers are the individuals that have mastered foundational knowledge, knowledge from first principles, and then that sort of expands outwards. And this is really like the most important thing I learned from the book. It's not learning fancy concepts or fancy ideas. If you can understand the basics, then you can always extrapolate out. And really that's a trend you'll see amongst all wealthy people, as they have this ability to think from first principles. So here is a bit on, the fundamentals. Don't rely on memorization, obviously. Comprehend the basics so that you can derive complex concepts. He gives the example of Richard Feynman, who's I believe he's a quantum physicist or a physicist. In 6 Easy Pieces, he starts from the number line and goes all the way up to pre-calculus without relying on any, predefined definitions. So that's obviously very interesting. If you can know first principles, you can apply it up, and that will really help you a lot in business. And handling reality. This is another huge thing. I didn't learn it from this book initially, but it's a really insanely powerful idea that preconceived notions often, distort your perception of reality, and they prevent you from making effective decisions. And that's really where the ego gets in the way. If you can minimize sort of your emotional response, conditioned responses you have to certain things, for some it might be outreach, for some it might be service delivery or thinking that a market is saturated. If you can just perceive clearly what reality is without your ego getting in the way, then you're going to be a lot better off. And finally, desire as well, in a similar fashion. Clouds perception, and as Alex Hormozy describes, the gap between expectations and reality is happiness. But Naval really is, this is more in the second part of his book, so I suggest you read it. It will really change the way you see happiness and desires. But if you can detach your expectations and just continue to do the actions that are the best, for lack of a better word, then you'll be in a better position if you can remove your ego. And to think clearly, have empty space. This is like an action item. 1 to 2 days a week. Put some time aside to really think about life, think about what you need to be doing. And yeah, the contrarian approach, finally, clear things off and contrarians. I'll let you read through that. And lesson 6 is collecting mental models. This is a really interesting action item. Obviously, all of our behavior is guided by models about, paradigms. So creating a framework of understanding the world to simplify the complex nature of everything into models or heuristics which you can apply. And, the Almanack highlights the importance of collecting, and understanding mental models as a means to improve decision making. So he highlights, I believe, 9 mental models. So evolution, inversion, complexity theory, economics. I'm not going to go into them all now, but feel free to have a read. And decisive mental models as well. If you can't decide, the answer is probably no. we have an overwhelming number of options. So it's critical to say yes only when, we're fairly certain that something is the right way to go about something. That was an awful way to phrase it, but I hope you can forgive me. And finally, learning to love to read. This is a very interesting one because I think Naval, hits the nail on the head. When it comes to reading, I know for a while I used to be an ego reader. Like, I'll read a book a week, then I'll read 52 books this year. And he really just highlights that it's not about the number of books you read. It's not about having, reading a book a week or finishing a book from start to finish. Firstly, he says it doesn't really matter what you read at the start. Your habits and interests will lead you to the information. But he and this was quite informative for me, he skims, he jumps around, he rereads books. He doesn't focus on memorizing specific passages. He absorbs the ideas. And he believes the better the book, the more slowly it should be absorbed. So actually, the Almanack itself, rather paradoxically, was one of the slowest books I've read. Even though it's not a very long book, it's about 150 pages, but it's much shorter to read. You could probably finish it in an hour or two. And yeah, he credits he credits his love for reading for any material success he's achieved. And he's quite a rich man, so I think that really should convince you that reading's an important thing. But as I said, I won't continue just reading off this. It's an unscripted video. I just wanted to highlight sort of the main point. And here's a summary: leverage, authenticity, specific knowledge. They're all very important. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like. Definitely have a look at the Google Doc. We'll go into a lot more detail. And if you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.